All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. We know that the money is secured for both the Big Ten and the SEC as they are getting it from the big networks such as Fox, ESPN, NBC, and CBS, but things are not that or as cozy for the Big 12, ACC, or Pac 12 as they're all in survival mode right now. Now, it's been about a year since the news broke that the Pac 12 would be losing two of its flagship schools, as both USC and UCLA are slated to bolt for the Big Ten in July of 2024. Since then, the Pac 12 has been seeking a new television deal with the 10 remaining members on board for now, while keeping the door open for possible expansion. Now, both the Big 12 and ACC got their new television deals, but the ACC could be coming up on some problems. The ACC's grant of rights runs through 2036, but already some schools such as Clemson and Florida State, just to name a few, are looking to find a way out of it potentially. Now, I talked about this several months ago, and plain and simple, it comes down to money. Schools are seeing the payouts that the Big Ten and SEC are giving their members, and they want a piece of that pie. This is the reason why Texas A&M, Texas, and Oklahoma all said adios to the Big 12 in favor of the SEC. USC and UCLA each changing their conference allegiances, and so many others, across the board. But will this madness ever stop? The ACC, Big 12, and Pac 12 are all trying to survive. And in doing so, they could be on a path to destroying each other in the process. Now, the Big 12 wants Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado from the Pac 12. And if that were to be the case, obviously that would mean that the Pac 12 would be more than likely ready to fold. Then the Big Ten would more than likely come in and probably swoop up Washington and Oregon, giving them a new home, which would somewhat cushion the travel blow for USC and UCLA since they're now going to the Big Ten. Now, ACC schools such as Clemson and Florida State are not thrilled to see the financial gap between themselves and the SEC, which is definitely going to lead to some friction. The Pac 12 is trying to secure its new TV deal just to try to keep up with the Big 12 and the ACC. But like I said before, it's only a matter of time before we get a 20 team conference. You look at Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and others, they're looking for more money, with the SEC more than likely being the conference that they're zeroing in on. And of course, the question is going to be, when is enough going to be enough? And this is what happens when you don't have a true governing body, as the chase for more cash, by these schools has turned into an all-out free-for-all. What about Notre Dame? Where do the Fighting Irish, find themselves in this mix? And of course, the question is going to be, will Notre Dame ever join a conference? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those where Notre Dame, they basically flirted with the Big East for a while. They were like, yeah, you know what? We'll be a part of your conference or every other sport with the exception of football. And now they're doing it to the ACC as well. But I think somehow, some way along the line, it might not be today or it might not be tomorrow, but at some point, Notre Dame, I think, is going to have their hand forced and they're not going to have a choice but to join a conference as a football member. You look at the conference wars right now, and they have shifted from the football fields to the boardrooms as the real battle comes down to the television deals. And, in some cases of one conference, you're just trying to survive at another conference's demise. That's basically what this thing is coming down to. Gone are the days of conferences focusing on a specific region, and of course, the rivalries that made said conferences. The Big Ten used to be solely a Midwest thing, but now it's a coast to coast spectacle, which is what the Big 12 is also trying to do as they're trying to survive. So, of course, for the Pac 12, what's next for them? Obviously, the Pac 12, they're seeking a television deal, a new deal. Probably is not going to get done until over the summer at some point. It's one of those where, in order for the Pac 12 to keep this thing together, it's going to have to be a deal close in the ballpark to what the Big 12 is getting. And you look at it and basically roughly estimating it. You're talking about the Big 12 members getting about $30 million per school. And that's about the same thing with the ACC right now. But of course, once it jumps up and you see the Big Ten and the SEC members getting about $50 million, there lies the problem. But getting back to the Pac 12, they're trying to get this new television deal. Let's see what it looks like. We don't know as of yet, but more than likely, they're going to expand, and it's probably going to come at the expense of the Mountain West and the American. Of course, San Diego State would give the Pac 12 another school in Southern California, also possibly bringing in UNLV, Boise State, and maybe even Fresno State. And then, of course, SMU from the American, because that would give them the Dallas market. All of these things I think could potentially be on the table for the Pac 12, as they, like the ACC and Big 12, are in survival mode right now. Just like it was for the Big East once upon a time, the American Athletic Conference has been ravaged by the defections. We've seen Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston all join the Big 12. And of course, if you're keeping score, once upon a time, Louisville and Rutgers were members of the American just for 1 year. It was that transition period for them from the Big East to the ACC and Big Ten, respectively. Now, the Big 12 is trying to survive at the Pac 12's expense. And this is very interesting because you go back a little bit more than 10 years, and at one point, we thought that the Big 12 was not going to be able to survive once Nebraska left for the Big 10, Colorado for the Pac-10 at the time, and then, of course, Missouri and Texas A&M for the SEC. They were able to keep it together, bringing in TCU and West Virginia, and losing Texas and Oklahoma really put the Big 12 in a tough spot. But they've just said, you know what, the heck with it. We're going to try to bring in, teams and schools that are going to keep us afloat. Hence why, you have Cincinnati there now, UCF. Houston gives them another team within the state of Texas. They already have several. And then, of course, BYU. But the Big 12, led by their conference commissioner, Brett Yormark, is looking at it like this. He's trying to, he doesn't have the brands, if you will, that the Big Ten has to go coast to coast, but nonetheless, he's trying to be in as many markets and as many regions and time zones as possible. Hence why there's a love affair there for Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah if they were to be unhappy with things that could potentially be coming down the pike with the Pac 12. But nonetheless, the Big 12, like everybody else, they're simply in survival mode right now. You look at it, the rumors are true about the ACC, with so many schools looking to get out of the current grant of rights. How would they be able to plug all of the holes within their ship? Well, at least today, you're hearing the conference commissioner come out from the ACC and say, hey, you know what? Everybody's on board. And of course, that's what he's going to say. And of course, whenever you hear about these stories, the school presidents, they're always going to come out publicly, at least, and say that they are fully committed to said conference. But of course, behind closed doors, they could be on the phone with a Big Ten. They can be on the phone with an SEC, whomever else, trying to secure a way into that respective conference. And I'll tell you like this, like I said several months ago, the problem is the money is not spread out across the board. If you look at the NFL, the owners, for the most part, they're getting like equal payouts with the television deals. Same thing can be said from the NBA and all these other pro leagues. It changes from conference to conference in college football, and that causes a problem right there. The NCAA, they're really not in charge, and we know that, and that is just adding to this because it's a free for all. And when you don't have a semblance of order, it leads to chaos. And collegiate athletics is no different than anything else. We're seeing that front and center right now. So, getting back to the ACC, uh, there's a possible docket on the board where, you know what, college football playoff members, any team that would get to the college football playoff, would get a bigger piece of the pie. They wouldn't have to spread that money around equally through the conference. And I think that's rightfully so. In the old days, it came down to, you know what, your success led to your payouts as far as what you were able to do on the gridiron or the basketball court. You got more TV time, you got more television money. That has obviously changed as everybody wants their piece of the pie. And of course, when a USC is getting about 15 to $20 million from the Pac-12, but then they see a Vanderbilt who doesn't have the success on the gridiron that USC has had, and that's no disrespect to Vanderbilt, getting 35 or $40 million from the SEC, USC is going to be like, where's our cut? And the same could be said, for an Oklahoma or a Texas in the Big 12 compared to what they can get from the SEC. And of course, the ACC schools are looking at that as well. They're no different. They want the money. And as long, even if the ACC got up to 40 and then the Big Ten or the SEC negotiated new TV deals, and their new TV deal would see them getting paid out 60 or $65 million, it's always going to be a problem because the money is there, but it's just how much that you want. And that's what it simply comes down to. Now, the job of a conference commissioner is a tough one. It is not an easy job. The rewards could be bountiful if you're able to keep everyone happy, but it's easier said than done. And the job is only going to get tougher because each conference commissioner now finds him or herself with more mouths to feed. It's a little bit different when you were dealing with an 8-team conference to keep everybody happy or a 10-team conference. We've just blown past the 12-team conference format, and now we're getting up to 16. And like I said, pretty soon it's going to be 20. That's a lot of people at the table that you got to try to go out there and keep happy. Good luck with that. So, with that all said and done, what is going to be next for the ACC, Big 12, and Pac 12 as they try to keep up with the SEC and Big 10? I will say this: the Big 12, in my mind, compared to both the ACC and Pac 12, is in a much better position. They've got their TV deal done. Everybody seems happy, and they know that there's a potential for them for expansion if things in the Pac 12 were to go awry. The Pac 12 right now, they are holding the wild card in this because their new television deal, when it comes down the pike, is going to set the mark, if you will, for a lot of conferences and a lot of schools. Because if those members in the Pac-12 are not happy, it's going to be a free for all as far as like Oregon, Washington, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah possibly leaving to go to other conferences, which would basically leave Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford to fend for themselves and try to probably merge with the Mountain West at that point, if that were to be the case. So we have to see what happens with the Pac 12, and we have to see if the ACC is going to be able to keep their respective members happy. It's just the nature of the beast. So, of course, the Big 12 is in a much better spot than the Pac 12 and the ACC. But again, we got to see what comes down the pike from the Pac 12 this summer or even later than that when they are able to possibly get a new television deal. So you ask yourself, what is the current state of college football? And like I've said before, it's the growing and widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it is only going to get bigger with the expanded college football playoff on the horizon. It's only going to get bigger with the streaming services and the networks putting up so much money to see said games. And of course, I talked about it last year when USC and UCLA decided to go to the Big Ten. I said, you know what, the Big Ten now had a huge advantage because guess what? They can go into any network and talk turkey because they now had the three biggest markets in the country at their setting, if you will, with the LA market, the Chicago market, and the New York market. And of course, what did the Big Ten turn around and do? They got to deal with CBS, Fox, and NBC. That is going to be tough to replicate for any conference, even the SEC. So with that said, it's a widening gap. The SEC has 16 teams. The Big Ten has 16 teams. It would not surprise me 10 years from now that we're talking about a 20-team Big Ten conference, a 20-team SEC conference, and the Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC, one of those conferences folding between now and then. So it's just an unfortunate state of things. It's one of those, again, it is so difficult to keep everyone happy. The ACC looked like everyone was happy at first, but I think once those Big Ten and SEC deals came down the pike, you know what? Things changed. So let's see if the ACC is going to be able to keep everyone happy. Let's see if the Pac 12 can get this done. And let's see if the Big 12 can keep on rolling as they try to keep up with the big boys at the table, which are the Big Ten and the Southeastern Conference. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.